Welcome to Ranting and Raving. This is another Saints episode. So we're going to talk a little bit of Saints. I would say we're in the middle of the dead period of the offseason, but the Saints' entire offseason has been dead. So the Zombie Act continues. We re-signed Mequan Smith to a 2-year deal at an amount greater than vet minimum, which makes no sense because he's a vet minimum player and there's no team in the league that was going to give him more than vet minimum. And if they were, should have fucking let him go. Yeah, I know. He's an incredible run blocking wide receiver. Okay. The Refrigerator Perry was a incredible pass catching defensive tackle. And while it got him a lot of commercials and novelty, the reason why he was a stud player is because he was an incredible nose tackle. Like, ancillary skill sets are relevant when your primary skill set is also relevant. He's not a good wide receiver. He's not healthy. He's not consistent. He doesn't run the routes well. He doesn't catch well. We heard through the first half of last, but wait, it's going to be so much better when Traquan gets back. And then he did, judges, fuck all. He did nothing. Does that mean, I hate him and he's a horrible person? No, he's just not a good NFL wide receiver. If he's your fifth guy on the team, if he's a guy you bring in on certain packages where, you're going to run play action and you want to take a deep shot and you need somebody who can run block, sure, he can have value there. Here's the thing, though. He's basically redundant with Callaway, except Callaway has actually shown the ability to at least have some level of consistent production as an NFL wide receiver. And the reality is that Traquan, as a consistent and reliable NFL receiver, the gap between him and Callaway is much larger as receivers than the gap between him and Callaway is as run blockers. Because Callaway is also a solid run blocker. Is he one of the best in the league? Not really, but how much value that actually has when your primary position is get open, draw coverage, catch ball? Not much. Yeah, okay, he's a good touchdown vulture. Again, fourth guy, fifth guy on the roster, that's fine. Right now, the money says that he's your number 2 wide receiver. That's a problem. That's not good. And we're ranting and raving, so we're not happy. This is what we do. Except when things are good, and then I'm going to shit. Oh, watch the Saints beat the Bucs and Tom Brady again, and watch how much I misbehave. But that hasn't happened yet, so we can't talk about it. We can only talk about what's going on. Does that mean that everything I have to say today is negative? No, actually, it's not. Like I said in the last video, the Saints have pretty clearly shown me that they've accepted who they are at this point. We've even had more stuff come out since then that makes that even more obviously true. Mickey Loomis has basically confirmed that the Saints have every intention of really starting to operate under the cap more like normal teams. Translating that, we were more than willing to go all in and spend all the money and do all the gymnastics if we could get Mr. 22 on the team. We couldn't. This isn't a contender, and so we're not going to spend like a contender. But if we make some moves, if we have a good draft, if we refill some of the talent, we get a couple of impact players, playmakers, catalysts, pick your superlative, but really good football players to fill some of our obvious holes, then all of a sudden we'll be all in again. That's really what that means. So it means that they've understood they have a talented team. They're not a bottom roster in the league. They're a bottom offense in the league. The offense today, right this minute, terrible, because Alvin Kamara is going to get suspended. We have no idea what to expect from Mike Thomas. And outside of those two guys, you can sum up the entire rest of the offensive skill players on this team with, and you just lost your starting left tackle. And your right guard is horrifically bad. His career highlights can be played to yakety sax. Think about that for a second. Highlights. His lowlights are the stuff of legend. If you've ever wondered what NFL on ice would look like, watch Ruiz try to move out into space. That's what it looks like. It's sad. So yeah, they have some major holes. But, you know, whether it's a guy on the team currently, a guy they signed later in the offseason, a guy they draft, if you address tackle, if you address guard, if you add a playmaking wide receiver, if you get a tight end who isn't, or big fish, which really he's a tight end two, not a tight end one. He struggles to get open. So he's a guy that needs to be schemed open or needs to receive favorable matchups. Once he catches the ball, if he catches the ball and he gets it in space, he has shown the ability to make plays and do things. Problem is he doesn't do those consistently because he's not a top option. So you need a reliable option at tight end, ideally a top option, but at least a reliable option. You need a number 2 wide receiver who can actually draw coverages, you can make plays, you can most importantly get open one-on-one. That's the missing component. You add those, you address the offensive line, you add another running back who belongs in the NFL. We don't currently have one. Sorry, Mark, you're old. 3 years ago, yeah, Mark Ingram was still a really good player. 5 years ago, great player. Don't have a time machine. We have current Mark. He's old. Doesn't play well. It's not going to be on the field a ton. It's not going to stay healthy. That's what happens to running backs. This happens to older players in general. Like one pro athlete that plays an impact position is beaten Father Time, and he's missed more games in the last 4 years than I think the entire rest of his career, and he's played 18, 19 seasons. That's LeBron. He's the only guy that's even won a round against Father Time, and he's missing tons of time to injury. That's what happens when you get old. It's the same in sports. I don't count punters, I don't count kickers, and I don't count quarterbacks because those guys don't get hit as much. They don't pay the same physical toll. Honestly, Drew Brees, if he didn't take that bad shoulder hit against Atlanta a few years ago, which a lot of us believe was the reason why he declined physically, and then some of those awful hits, which Ruiz did 2 of them, just if anyone's taking notes, like if those plays don't happen, Drew's probably still playing. But they happened. So he had the injuries, so he couldn't keep going. But for the rest of the guys, once those injuries start piling up, your career starts ending. That's just the way it goes. So can't rely on marks. You need, let's go back over this, offensive tackle, offensive guard, wide receiver, tight end, running back. Those are 5 positions on offense where you're bad. We are bad at those positions. Michael Thomas is a floor raiser. So can Michael Thomas help elevate the players around him? Yes, he can. But Michael Thomas isn't a game breaker. Michael Thomas isn't a guy who's going to catch 3 balls and have 3 touchdowns. And they're all 30, 40 yards down the field. That doesn't mean Michael Thomas isn't great. It means you need someone who adds the dynamic element to your offense, which changes how teams cover you and actually helps both Mike have success, but also helps you feed off of the success that Mike has, because Mike is a god tier possession receiver. He's Super Saiyan Anquan Bolden. That's a great thing. If you have that guy and then you have a dynamic playmaker, it's easier for the dynamic playmaker to win one-on-one and have production because, well, you can't single cover Mike because then it's just a first down every fucking play. But if you double cover Mike, now that guy's going to find a way to get open and he can blow the top off your defense. And now you've created a catch-22 situation for the defense. That is actually what made the 2011 offense, again, what I believe is the greatest offense in the history of the NFL. It's because no matter what you chose to try to stop, you opened up something else to beat you. That's when you have a great offense. Well, we have the opposite problem. If they choose to stop anything, we run out of options. Because last season, the only option was AK. This season, the only option will be Michael Thomas because AK will be suspended. And even if you have the 2 of them, Jameis isn't good at throwing to the flats and getting AK the ball in the places where he needs it. And AK is a running back who is a very good runner, except you have a bad offensive line. So guess what? Signing Mequan, a wide receiver who's a great blocker, well, he's a great blocker down the field. Great blocking wide receivers help you extend plays. They occasionally help break a guy free running out to the sides, but they don't help you win down over down in the run game. That's not a real thing. If anyone tells you it is, drug test them and then never listen to them about football again, because it's not a real thing. The guy bringing a great block 25 feet to the right of where the tackle happens did not have a positive impact on the play. Oh, but he did a great job blocking there. Yeah. And if that happened 25 yards down the field instead of 25 feet to the right, it would have been an impact play because that guy just helped create a cut lane, just helped create extra yards. That's a good thing. But that only matters if the guy can actually get to the parts of the field where your blocking wide receivers matter. Except on, stretch plays and around things like that, where occasionally it does. But these are fringe plays. These are not your bread and butter. You can't build an offense around them, and no one does, because they build offenses around people who can actually execute the jobs they're being paid for. The only position that is inherent in the identity of the position to be a jack of all trades is tight end. And we don't have a jack of all trades tight end, because usually in the modern NFL, you have one guy who's a jack of all trades, a Josh Hill type, and then an impact player, even a Jared Cook type, lower level, but still that kind of guy, or obviously back in the heyday, a Jimmy Graham, who's an all-time great, and you're not necessarily hoping to get that, although it would be awesome, but that's the way it works. To a certain degree, offense in the NFL is geometry. And the way you control the geometry, the way you dictate terms to the defense, is you force the defense to react to players. And by reacting to players, they have to vacate space, which now creates space for other players to be able to occupy. And when they occupy that space, if it's on time and on target, meaning it happens at the right time and the quarterback is on target with the delivery, you have a functioning offense. And if you don't have those things, you have problems. And that's where we are. So, with that said, like I said last week, the Saints have acknowledged who they are. They're a declining team with some major deficiencies on the roster. They are not a destination place for free agents because they don't have a quarterback. And free agents, unless you overpay, don't go to small markets. As much as they love to visit the city of New Orleans, they don't necessarily want to live in the city of New Orleans, even though there are guys who do want to live there. See CJ McCollum, who has embraced the city and the city embraces him. This is a real thing. We've seen this pretty much since the beginning of the freaking sports in New Orleans. But those are the outliers. That's not every player's mentality. That's not every player's reality. And especially for the younger guys, the guys that you actually want to sign as free agents, unless they've already won, they want to win. They want to get paid, and they want to win. So if you can't give them a better chance to win, you have to give them more money, unless there are additional opportunities to make more money that come as a result of being in said location. That's the big market appeal. It's not about it being a big media market like the media talks about. It's the reason why no one ever signs in New York. But you know what? People do sign in LA. And people do sign in some of the other large markets. Even if they're not large media markets, they're large brand markets for the NFL. They're large brand markets for media in that regard. Tom Brady's here. Tom Brady gets a LeBron James level of coverage. I'll go sign with Tom Brady. I'll get like an extra 5 endorsement deals locally from that, make an extra $500,000 a year, and be sitting pretty. And that's for a low level guy. For a high level guy, move the comma over. So that's really where this thing stands for the Saints. All that said, all they have to do is hit in the draft. In the first 3 rounds, here's your perfect draft scenario. You need 2 impact players and 2 contributors. You need 4 players to turn this team around. Now, they have more than 4 holes, but if you get 4 players, you can turn the team around. You can completely change the outlook. The outlook today exists with the roster we have today. The disappointment exists with a team that was on the decline that has objectively gotten worse from the end of last year to today. You have the draft. You get a wide receiver with real talent. Out of Traquan Smith in the 3rd round, although at least his numbers in college says he should have been a good player. He hasn't been, But that wasn't a bad pick because you didn't overdraft a guy. You didn't get a guy who doesn't project to be good at all. I still contend Laquan Treadwell was always a bad pick because he couldn't get open in college. Yeah, he made tons of contested catches and lots of big plays. Yeah, tons of contested catches and lots of big plays, but couldn't fucking separate. You're going to put him against better athletes and better players. He can't separate. Anquan Boldin was slow. He could separate. Michael Thomas is slow. He can separate. He's explosive. They're not the same thing. You can be quick and still be slow. Look at Michael Thomas. He doesn't run straight line speed fast. He's not going to run past a lot of guys, but he's quick so he can create separation. Those are the things you're looking for. You're looking for guys who can win one-on-one, impact players. If you get a running back, a wide receiver, a tight end, and an offensive tackle, 4 players, you have to hit on 2 of those. If you hit on 2 of those and you get impact players, immediate impact rookies, like we did last year, you got Pete and you got Adebo. You got impact rookies. If you get 2 of those in your first 4 picks and you have 4 and you manage to get 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, okay, you have a shot. And one of those has to be wide receiver. You can't get a 3rd or 4th round wide receiver and expect for the projections to be great. Now look, that guy could instantly be an impact rookie and we'd be ecstatic. But they would have to produce first and we can be ecstatic. You're not going to go, oh yeah, they drafted this guy. But my mock draft had him in the first. I think he's going to be amazing. Well, that's great. And some people are going to do that, but it doesn't fucking mean anything. That includes me. I used to get hyped about mock draft guys all the time and I'd love them and then they'd go somewhere and then they wouldn't do anything and I'd be looking like a jackass. Not alone in this. Happens to all of us. It's normal. But that's really where things stand. So everything now is about the draft. I'd love, which tells us where we are, love if they would like just sign a guy like Sammy Watkins. Of the available guys, Sammy Watkins is probably the one guy that at least has a little bit left in the tank. You know, he fits Jameis well. He's a downfield player. You know, bring in Sammy and let him and Traquan fight for a roster spot. But again, all of this really comes down to the draft. If they draft well, we're going to have a completely different conversation here over in a couple months. And then we can really enter the off season and all of that. Like we'll have completely different conversations. But if they don't draft well, and they don't get guys who at least project to be impact players at 2 of those 4 spots, and preferably their first 4 picks should go to those 4 positions in some fucking order, then get ready for a lot of really annoying mediocrity, which is what we enjoyed all of last year. Like even when they were 5-2, that was a lot of annoying mediocrity. Like they were really, really, really fun against Green Bay, and they were really, really, really fun against Tampa, and they were really, 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 really tough to watch almost the entire rest of the season. It was painful. Get ready for that, because that's what we're going to be getting. We'll have a good, occasionally great, but not all-time great defense that's going to be worse than it was last year. Malcolm retired. Like that's another thing we haven't talked about. Malcolm Jenkins retired, and not only losing his leadership, but he was a good player on the field. And you also just lost your 2 starting safeties, and safeties are erasers on defense. That's their job. The safety, like a playmaking safety, is a top player. And like an Ed Reed was like the epitome of this. Marcus Williams was an impact player, his range, breaking up passes, also had ball skills. Really shouldn't have let him go, but they are in rebuild mode, so they're not going to sign every talented free agent they have because they're in rebuild mode. That's the reality. Would they have liked to keep Marcus Williams? Yes. Are they anything remotely close to contention right now? No. So they're not going to spend that kind of money on it because they have too many other holes. That's the reality. That's where we are. But we're at the point. Let's wait for the draft. Let's see how the draft goes. We'll have more conversations as we go to there. But for now, they re-signed Mequan. And Meh pretty much describes every move this offseason. I don't hate the May signing. Like he's a good player. He's not a great player, but you paid him good player money. So that could be fine. And we'll see how that goes. He's coming off of an Achilles, which is still a devastating injury, even though people do come back from it now. They didn't used to at all. And he's got a DUI, but That's a good signing. It's not a great signing. You didn't get better. You still got worse, but you got less worse than you could have got worse. So, that one, you can spin that one positive. Re-signing Tre'Quan Smith, there's nothing positive about that. At best, you're neutral. If he's your wide receiver 5, you're neutral. If he's your wide receiver 3 or higher, you're fucked. As we've seen the last several years. But that's where we are. It'll be fun, and appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't enjoy the content, like, comment, subscribe.